The Compete Caribbean, the IDB, the CDB, and Canada commissioned a report that was put together by the Economist Intelligence Unit. And it was on private sector development in the Caribbean. And it looked at 14 different countries. And one of the compelling segments of this report stated as such: if Caribbean economies are to avoid remaining trapped in low value-added activities and the production of commodities, they will need to implement innovation-driven plans for growth. Productivity gains and competitiveness are closely linked to innovation as economies move up to higher developmental stages. And it went on to say that the traditional distinction between countries being developed or developing will become less relevant, and we will instead differentiate among countries based on whether they are innovation rich or innovation poor. And then it highlighted very quickly that the Latin American and Caribbean region underperforms in terms of productivity and innovation compared with other regions. And the weakness, it said, in the area of innovation means that productivity is lower than potential, given that innovation firms in Latin America and the Caribbean are more productive than non-innovative ones. I guess one could get the opportunity and visit this particular report and go into it in more detail. But these are some compelling statements made. Hence, the importance to look at the whole aspect of innovation and entrepreneurship, and what are the fundamentals surrounding innovation and entrepreneurship in the financial services sector. What are the governance mechanisms, the legislative and regulatory mechanisms, institutional strengthening mechanisms, or capacity building, as it were, or awareness mechanisms, and how can we harness all these in a very swift manner in order to harness the opportunities for microfinancing, for SME financing, etc. So to discuss some of those issues related to innovation and entrepreneurship, we have here with us Miss Judith Margaret Susan Mark, I would say it in full as I see it here, to my immediate left. And she holds an MBA and also a postgraduate certificate in marketing and consumer behavior, a BSc in management studies, and is the managing director at CME Consulting Limited. This is an enterprise development company. She's also a lecturer in innovation and entrepreneurship studies at the postgraduate level. Judith has held executive positions and board memberships in the state and private sectors, including serving as CEO at 2 state entities in Trinidad and Tobago. Her expertise covers strategic and project management, enterprise development modeling, and SME risk-based financing with emphasis on venture capital. Judith has written and presented on entrepreneurship, corporate governance, and innovative financing for SMEs. Her interests include abstract art, design thinking, and innovative regional transformation initiatives. Judith Mark. We also have further to my left is Mr. Terence Clark. Terence has been in banking and investments for more than 20 years, most of those years at the senior management level for both local and international financial institutions, and participated in funding proposals for a wide range of sectors across the Caribbean. In addition to banking and investments, he also became a regulator when he was the general manager of the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission. He is presently the founder of a private Fintech company that provides online funding and trade platforms for the Caribbean securities market. He holds a master's degree in economics from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, and an MBA in corporate finance from York University in Toronto, Canada. He is the author of 2 textbooks in both capital markets and mutual funds in Trinidad and Tobago, and co-authored another for the University of the West Indies Open Campus on financial economics. He has lectured at undergraduate and postgraduate levels in economics and Caribbean capital markets. Hence, we have a very comprehensive, well-defined expertise here. And to my extreme left, we have Tracy, whom you are already acquainted with from yesterday. So you would be acquainted with his extensive bio. Having said this, let me now immediately and without taking any more time invite Judith Mark to the podium for her presentation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Let me say thanks to ITU and its partners for inviting me to speak at this event. We all know the importance of innovation and entrepreneurship, and very importantly, the common thread in what we've been discussing, the role of technology in making it happen. I've been asked to speak on the role of innovation and entrepreneurship in financial services sector. At first, I was wondering why me and why innovation and entrepreneurship when we have some really qualified people around. But as a lecturer in innovation and entrepreneurship, and as one who also pushes my students to come up with businesses that utilize technology, recognizing the importance of technology in building competitive businesses, I can understand the reason for me being here. So what I'm going to do is look at the context of which I'm going to be talking, the existing scenario in the context of the Caribbean, some of the innovations in transactions and financing, and I know that some persons would have touched on those already, the emerging issues that we need to discuss, and recommendations and conclusions. So in this topic, my focus is going to be on the small and medium enterprise sector in terms of how innovation and entrepreneurship is affecting that sector. And why? Because I think everyone knows we've been talking about SMEs, and we hear all these nice words, the engine of the economy, the basis on which we're going to build competitive markets, etc. So I think the importance of SMEs in moving small open island states like CARICOM member states forward cannot be overemphasized. And we therefore have to look at that in the context of how then do we ensure we have the right mix and the right type of financing to those businesses, and how do we ensure that those businesses are adequately placed and adequately positioned and really at a level so as to entice the providers of financial capital and the provider of financial services. So if we take a look in the existing scenario, which is the environment in which we operate, and I think that is important because I always say everything must be in context of prevailing circumstances. I mean, the previous speaker mentioned about things not being done in Canada and waiting for Canada to do it before we do it. And very often what we see is that we take initiatives in other jurisdictions and try to force fit them into our own, and we run into problems, recognizing that there are some unique characteristics, and while we may draw on something in another market, we then have to see what is unique about our own conditions and tailor accordingly. So we are placed with a situation where we have declining national revenues, and I think that probably holds true for most, if not all, of the countries or islands. We have increasing unemployment. We have a measure of social unease. Crime and security continue to plague our islands, our countries. Let me say, not forgetting the places like Guyana and Suriname that are not islands, but a part of the CARICOM. limited fiscal space, and that may be tied to the first point of declining national revenues, because as revenues decline, it means that our governments are limited in terms of some of the things they can do, this fiscal incentives, etc. So there's limited fiscal space. And of course, we see globally and both regionally the increasing use of technology in almost every aspect of our lives. So the question is, how then do we treat with innovation and entrepreneurship and looking at opportunities in the context of that environment? Let us not lose sight of the environment in which we're operating in. So if I take a look now at the profile of businesses, and I'm saying businesses on both sides, businesses from the standpoint of the SMEs and businesses from the standpoint of the providers of financial services that will have to work with or provide services to those SMEs. So we see the product profile, by and large, have not significantly changed over the years. From the SME standpoint, most of the businesses are not the kind of innovative, technology-driven types of businesses. However, we are beginning to see more and more entrepreneurs recognizing the importance of these areas based on the potential for growth, based on the potential to be competitive, and again, recognizing that when you use technology, the issue of geographic location takes less of meaning, right? So that it is no longer tied to big and small, or whether in the Caribbean or whether in another area. On the standpoint of the financial services sector, we see the profile of services being provided that have been traditional in nature and not much innovation per se, recognizing, of course, the top of the chart where I say the market is changing and the region is changing and the operating environment is changing, and yet the services being offered continue to be the same by the traditional providers, and that in itself is cause for concern. With respect to access to information, very often we say that one of the challenges that SMEs face is access to information. One of the pluses of the global economy and the digital economy is that information is now becoming readily available, and that is therefore allowing companies to be more efficient, and I would say more cost effective overall. And by doing that, it means that they are more attractive to capital. They are more able to access financial capital because they're operating more efficiently. Financial issues. What about the revenue streams? It means that the environment is now providing SMEs with different ways and different options with respect to revenue streams. So no longer do you have to necessarily get revenues because you have a physical office, a physical business place. Yes, that is maybe important in some areas. Yes, the geographic space might be important, but increasing use of technology means that your online sales, your online transactions, etc., can allow you to have multiple sources of revenue. And the same holds true for your cost structure as well, so that the physical infrastructure is no longer an absolute necessity, because you can have a very profitable online business. And let me say, for financial institutions in the traditional form, even that is something that has to be examined, because I think in time to come, we're going to see less brick and mortar with respect to the providers of financial capital, and it is happening. So the question is, with all that is happening around us, what do we do? Sit down, sleep, hope for something to happen? Or should we then find ways to innovate and to address the challenges, or more importantly, to identify that in the midst of everything, opportunities exist, and the onus is on us to capitalize on those opportunities? Now, if we take the investing group, or the group with financial capital, or the group from which we want financial services, and we also recognize that there are a number of SMEs, one of the challenges in SMEs attracting capital would be some measure of misalignment. It is for that reason traditional providers of capital has said that SMEs carry too much risk and there hence the reluctance to finance them. So it really a misalignment in terms of the interests of the financial providers and the type of SMEs coming forward. Now, in the context of going forward, what you would probably see now is an technology providing an opportunity to bring parties with similar interests together, right? So that the investor that is looking for a particular type of business can zero in specifically on that type of project or that type of business, as opposed to going to the traditional provider that is not interested in your particular venture. So you have technology allowing for greater alignment of interests. Of course, it is influencing the way value is created, delivered, or captured. Or simply put, it is influencing the business model on all sides of those providing financial services, of those coming up with businesses, those with the business opportunities, and so on. So the business model, I think technology is providing an opportunity to innovate the business model. Issues such as customer relationship management that will allow parties to engage, talk to each other, get to know each other better. And that in itself has implications in terms of risk. Because as you are able to better fine-tune the customer, know the likes, the dislikes, the habits, and so on of the customer, that will increase the level of what I say, trust, reduce the level of risk, allow you to analyze data, and in that sense, I think would assist with respect to credit, and that is the role of organizations like Caracris and so on, in terms of your ability to assess the credit of those who you want to provide financial services to. All right? And by all means, it has implications, as I said, for the risk profile of the ventures. Okay. So what we're saying is technology enhanced business model innovation is becoming increasingly important. And out of that, we see some products coming forward in respect to the financial market. Again, as I said, if all of this is happening and traditional providers do not capitalize on the gap, it means that it provides an opportunity for entrepreneurs scanning the market to come up with new and innovative products to provide services that are required, for which there is a need. Hence, we are seeing an increasing number of new financial products being developed by entrepreneurs. Earlier on, somebody asked the question about whether for the traditional providers of capital, all that is happening is seen as a threat or if it is seen as an opportunity or just indifferent about it. I am particularly surprised that many of the traditional providers have not capitalized on the trends that are taking place with respect to technology and have innovate their own business models to capitalize on those opportunities. One of the questions I asked the bank once is that, how come you tell SMEs they need to innovate their business model, and yet you continue to operate with the same business model that is becoming increasingly irrelevant in today's marketplace? And I'm saying the innovation has to take place on all sides so that the traditional providers, yes, you innovate different parts of your business model in terms of the customers you want to serve, or should we continue the same statement that is not our business, too risk averse, finish with that, full stop. But fortunately, we have a group of entrepreneurs that recognize that where there's a problem, you need to get a solution. And if there are a group of individuals, new businesses looking for financial services that are not being provided by traditional providers, then we are going to come in and fill that gap. And that is what is happening with all the new initiatives that we see coming to bear. And I dare say, I think for some of the more innovative traditional providers, we are going to see them perhaps coming up with a mix of products and within the existing system, so that they too would capitalize on what is becoming an increasingly valuable industry in terms of the mobile industry, the technology industry, etc. I don't have my timing. Oh, it's right here. Is this the timer? No? No, it's not on. I like to know how many minutes I have again. Who's the timer? Hmm? Okay, all right. So I don't want to be end. I like to know I have how much time before. All right, so we have things like crowdfunding coming to bear. I just touched on a few crowdfunding. I don't know if this was discussed yesterday. I was not here. So I'm just touched briefly. And basically, again, while we may say crowdfunding is primarily, if you say projects on one hand and those providing capital on the other. But what crowdfunding has over, say, even venture capital financing is that to the investor who is not inclined to take risk within a portfolio as it is in a VC fund, you can go for this project that is in alignment with your position in terms of your profile, right? The kind of project that you are interested in. So you have that more direct alignment between specific project and the kind of financing. What it also means, again, because it's operating on a platform, it means that the reach is greater. So that as an investor, you are no longer restricted by those projects that you see because you walk into, whether it is a particular finance house or your network that is immediately available. The market, the global market is almost your space. And yet you are able to better fine tune your investing needs with a particular project that meets the profile that you're interested in. And what is happening today, the crowdfunding industry that is expected to amass approximately $80 billion by 2020, and that's based on a World Bank report, is poised for as a major player within the financial services market in terms of providing capital, right, and support services as well. So what you're going to see as well is not only just the finance, but also support. Now, Susu. For me personally, I say to people, I find crowdfunding is a high level Susu. And what is it called in Jamaica? What is what we call Susu? Any Jamaicans here? No? But they have it in every jurisdiction by different names. But where in the community you mobilize some money and one person gets that share at the end of the day, right? But I'm saying it builds upon that initiative, and yet it has become so popular now. And you can see now with technology and even communities, given that everybody has a mobile phone, that presents an opportunity for what I would say some measure of community entrepreneurship on both sides, on the side of the SMEs and on the side of the technology persons. No, I don't ever take 0 minutes. So I'm going to assume it's 5. Okay, I'd live with that. Yeah, right? So, in terms of the opportunities to reach communities, as the case may be. Okay? And then angel investing, where you have angel investing platforms, where again, similar to crowdfunding in a sense, except that is a smaller investor group. Okay? We also have as well, we talk about mobile money, and of course mobile money is really tied and is leveraging on the fact that the mobile penetration, my understanding that in the Caribbean and Latin America region, the mobile penetration is as much as 70 something percent. Is that correct? Or 80 or thereabout? Right, but the last report I read 80, and I'm not surprised because there have been significant developments perhaps That would have been like about 4 years ago. In the last 4 years, we all know with all the players in the market what is happening. So that is fantastic. So that provides, again, for someone who lectures on innovation and opportunity identification, that provides an opportunity on both sides for those who are willing to pursue a business, as well as those recognizing the need to provide financing for those businesses. Now, and you see why we need innovative financing products. Because while we talk about getting into innovative types of businesses, you know that in itself makes it more challenging to attract traditional sources of capital, right? Because very often they have a higher level of intangible asset class. My mobile business, my tech business does not have the traditional fixed asset to be leveraged in order to attract capital. So it's a chicken and egg. We say to be competitive as a region, we want innovative businesses. But yet, as the businesses are innovative, it makes it difficult for them to attract the capital. What do? And that is why I would say hats off to all those entrepreneurs in the area of technology and financial technology who are capitalizing on that gap or on that space, in the market. Why do I have venture capital as innovative? I mean, it has been around for quite some time, right? Albeit in the context of the Caribbean, the story has been dismal. So maybe I'm challenging someone to come up with an innovative way to mobilize that money and to really provide capital to those entrepreneurs for which the risk profile is so high that they're going to be challenged to attract capital. Okay, so that's why I have that there. Okay, what are some of the issues? As we talk about using technology, we talk about things like mobile money, crowdfunding, angel investing, and so on. Baby said yesterday, probably said this morning, but there's no harm saying it again. The issue of trust. Trust has always been an issue, even the traditional way of doing businesses. So that somebody walks into the bank, for whatever reason, you meet the profile, you just don't get the money. And it can start from just how you walk in, how you look, how you whatever. The whole issue of trust. But now, with a faceless system, because we're using technology, it means that trust is a bigger issue. Right? So we have the issue of trust. The issue of legislation and regulation. If you take about a crowdfunding platform amassing so much money from who you don't know, how then we going to treat with that? But this presents a real challenge for the regulators. Who is going to regulate? Should we have one body regulating all these different players? Or should we have multiple institutions? And if so, given declining national revenues, the cost benefit of so doing when we have several institutions? Then the issue of fraud and money laundering. But the question is, or I should say, what has been said is that notwithstanding all the billions of dollars in crowdfunding and angel investing, there have been very, very limited instances of fraud and money laundering. So it's really one of taking risk and how you perceive that risk and the willingness to capitalize on opportunities, notwithstanding that there's going to be risk. Then, even for the crowdfunding platforms or the angel investing or mobile operations, parameters in terms of what you can do, what you can't do, which market you're going to serve, how it's going to be done, how it's going to be regulated, etc. These are some of the things that we have to touch on as we seek to capitalize on the opportunities. So I would say that in the context of innovation and entrepreneurship, I am saying we need to see innovation on both sides. Innovation on the side of the providers of financial services, existing as well as potential, and those recognizing the trends in the marketplace, capitalizing on the opportunities, knowing that there is a market waiting to be served. And those are the kind of entrepreneurs that I think we need to support. And I say we at all levels: government, private sector, NGOs. All right. At the same time, the financial services market need to be innovative, and I do not know if our existing players can say it's business as usual. This is our market. We'll continue to serve them, because I dare say it is going to shrink. In that, while some of the new products will provide opportunities as you move along the continuum, it will also mean that there's a possibility to lose some business if you don't become innovative. So, innovative instruments create challenges for governance, regulatory oversight, and deal structuring. Technology-enabled innovation assists in addressing social and economic challenges, okay, for enterprise creation. Now, what I would say, let us not, no, if you see me moving like this, it's because I teach. And when I teach, I don't stay one place. I move around the classroom. So sometimes I just forget that I just have this in front of me. So funny enough, I can't see this from here. But basically, maybe I could come down. You will probably hear me. What's that? Is that there?
The mic on.
Yeah, but it's a small room.
No, they're recording. They're streaming live.
Oh, they're streaming live. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Use online.
Yeah. So I could go down now.
Yeah. Go down now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm almost done.
Oh.
Okay. Now, what I want to say is that while we treat for these issues, and that is why I put in them the macro factors about decline in revenue streams, unemployment, crime and security, social unease. There's a reason for that. I firmly believe that whatever we do, it must be in the context of moving the region forward, addressing regional challenges, addressing regional issues. That's the only way. The importance of things like social entrepreneurship and community entrepreneurship. So if it's one thing I want to say is that any attempt to innovate in financial services ought not to be seen as merely utilizing technology to reach existing markets. It cannot. But more so an opportunity to serve untapped or previously ignored markets. All those areas that we say they don't have entrepreneurs, nothing happening, only crime. In the midst of those areas are innovative persons, creative persons with good ideas. We then have to see how we can tap into those areas, lest we just continue to serve the same group. That doesn't speak to competitiveness and building an innovative society. So given that increased community entrepreneurship and social activities are required in the recovery efforts of a small island states, the role of financial technology is emphasized. In other words, community entrepreneurship, things like mobile money in Haiti, a means to address issues and to move markets seen as high risk forward. Right? Under normal circumstances, those markets would be left behind. But how could we talk about being competitive and leave out a significant part of our market in which we may just find that winner? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.